Hey, it is Friday. We're here at the end of the week, and I want to just close this week with something. You know, our church is we sing. I guess we sing contemporary Christian music mostly in our church. We do blend in some of old hymns every now and then with some of the songs that we do, but we don't sing out of hymnals. We do contemporary music, but we like worship, all kinds of worship, and I've grew up in. Or sang and been a part of churches that have Southern gospel choirs and Southern gospel music, and I love that too. I just love worship. I've even enjoyed it when I was in places like Seoul, Korea, and in the Ivory Coast of West Africa, and in other places where I don't even speak the language. And I've sat many times in a worship service when people were singing in Africa, singing in Tree, their language, native tongue, or singing Spanish, and this place, and I've been many places where in Korean, where I was in Seoul, Korea, and they sang in Korean. Well, many times I've been in worship services where I didn't understand a single word that was being sung, but that didn't stop me from worshiping. I love worship. It says in Acts chapter 16, verses 25 to 26, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying, and they were singing hymns to God, and the prisoners, the other prisoners that were there, were listening to them, and suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of that prison was shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's bonds were unfastened. You know, can I just share with you, just real briefly, as we finish out this week, and with just some thoughts that are on my head. We're close now, just a couple days away, to our Sunday worship service at our church, and we're going to be coming together. Before I preach the word, we'll be able to stand and we'll be able to worship. Can I share with you just briefly why worship is so important? Just briefly, 7 things that worship does. First of all, it takes the focus off of us, and it places us back on God. It takes the focus off of you. Sometime one lady said to the preacher, she said, I didn't enjoy the worship today. And he said, well, that's all right. We weren't worshiping you. And I think that's pretty important. Worship is getting our focus off of us and getting it on the Lord. The second thing that worship does is it brings the greatest of men and women and puts them in the place of humility. Worship is about humbling ourselves before one that is far greater than us. You can't worship without worshiping Him really in humility, because you're worshiping one who's worthy of your worship. The third thing it does is it puts fear and fleeing into the psyche of our enemies. In the Old Testament, they took their worship leaders and put them in front of the armies. I don't know about you, it's been pretty tough to be a worship pastor in the Old Testament. They put those worship leaders in the front, and they sang songs like God is great and His mercy endured forever. I mean, if I was a worship leader and I'm going to be without a weapon in front of the army, I want to be singing a song like God is bad and He can blow you away. But that's not the songs they sang. They sang God is glorious and His mercy endures forever. And sometimes when the praise would enter the camps of their enemies, the enemies would just immediately fall down and surrender their weapons, because the glory of God preceded the armies. The fourth thing that worship does is it leaves no room for bitterness, no room for complaining or negativity. During the worship time, all the whining and all the complaining just goes away, because the focus is not one another or our conflicts in the world, it's the Lord. The fifth thing it does is it's an invitation for God to come in and be Himself in our lives. And I want people to be themselves. Some people raise their hands, and some people clap, and some people shout, and some people just stand there, and that's all right too. It doesn't bother me one bit. I want people to be themselves, and it's an invitation for God to come in and be Himself as well. The sixth thing I would say is worship ushers in a cleansing and a refreshing of the Spirit. I just feel cleaner, and I feel like I'm more in the presence of God in the middle of worship. The last thing it does is it's what we just read in our passage from the book of Acts. It paves the road for the supernatural in our lives. When Paul and Silas worshiped, the supernatural hand of God went to work. My dear friend, when you head to church this weekend, and I challenge you to do that, whether it's New Hope or somewhere else, when you go to church and you worship, buckle up, because you might just see the supernatural hand of God go to work in your life and in your heart. Father, I pray that you'll bless us this weekend. Prepare us for worship and for church that's coming this week. Use our lives, dear God, to bring honor and glory to you. In the name of Jesus, we pray that. Amen. God bless you. I look forward to seeing you next week as we have a chance to continue to share. As I share with you, that which God has shared with me.